Hello out there and welcome to episode 56 of the Nursing Home Abuse Podcast. My name is Rob Schenk.
And I'm Will Smith.
And we are nursing home abuse and neglect lawyers in the state of Georgia, and we are your hosts for this episode. As this episode goes to air, it is February 19th, 2018. I have probably at this point eaten at least 250 pounds, far more than my body weight.
In chocolate? Or
Nope.
just food in general?
In confectioner sugar conversation hearts.
God. Oh.
What's interesting is, I could bore you with some stats. I'm going to make some up, and I'm pretty sure they're correct. They make 1 billion pounds of it in, the month of February. Their plants churn out 1 million.
I just don't understand, it has no value whatsoever. It's not filling. Mm-hmm. It's just candy. I hate candy
this is where
so much.
This is where I don't understand you. Do you not eat dessert?
But dessert is filling. It has the umami aspect to it. It's it's fulfilling.
I guess. I don't know when you became a Queen Elizabeth, you know what I'm saying? Crown type.
But to me, it's the same. I eat food because I'm hungry. To me, it's like saying, hey, I'm really hungry. Can you throw me a peppermint? That's what...
See, that's the opposite then. That would be what my argument is. I'm saying that the candy's purpose is for flavor only. It's not because it's not like, hey, I just got through with this, incredible workout of the day at CrossFit. Give me some candy. It's like I've had a meal. I'm satisfied, but it would be great to taste. Why am I it's like I'm explaining this to a non-human. It's like K-Pax is my co-host of this show. Are you kidding me right now?
I hate candy. I just don't like candy.
But you're acting as though you can't comprehend that candy exists and that people enjoy it.
Oh, I comprehend it. People like black licorice, which completely blows my mind, but I comprehend it. I just don't like it. I don't appreciate it. I don't accept it.
Jeez. Okay. That's strange. But I think it's interesting that with the conversation hearts, how they've changed throughout the years. So it used to be hug me, or give me a kiss. Now it's text me, check me out on Instagram. Do you have any idea what I'm talking about?
I haven't seen a conversation heart in probably 5 or 6 years.
Okay.
But
you understand the concept. It's a little candy that has an expression on it, and the expressions used to be old-fashioned.
Oh, I know what it is.
Right, give me a hug, say hi, can we talk?
Yeah.
Now it's text me back, Instagram me, modern time stuff, which is interesting.
That's interesting. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's interesting.
It's 100% true. They do.
I don't think a lot of people are going to bother to see if that's true, so I think you're just saying that. I'm going to get some of these hearts. Just to see if they have changed over the years.
I 100%. The only thing that I have made up in this episode is they make 1 billion pounds of it, and that I've eaten 250 pounds of it, and that's not my actual body weight. Is 250 pounds. Those are the only false things that I've said.
Okay.
All right. So what's the first story? Where's the first story coming out at us from?
So this is coming from Vermont, and it's coming from Burlington, Vermont, and what do they have there?
A lot of coats.
A lot of coats. They have the biggest coat factory in Burlington, Vermont. We just made that up. I'm just kidding. So the estate of an elderly woman died at a Pillsbury Manor in Vermont, and they're suing the facility. And essentially what happened was, and this is horrible, her head got trapped between the bed rail and an air mattress.
So before we get into this, what is an air mattress?
It's a mattress that has, it's supported by air, and its main purpose is to help somebody avoid getting pressure ulcers. So it's softer and it moves. It's supposed to move with the resident as they go back and forth, as opposed to a mattress that is filled, a spring mattress that's a lot harder and doesn't have as much give and is more likely to cause a pressure ulcer.
And bed rails are exactly what they sound like. Is this so?
They go on the sides.
They go on the sides.
They go up and down. Some people have bed rails, some don't.
Okay. So go ahead. I'm sorry. I just wanted to make sure that we're all on the same page.
Yeah. So her head got caught in between the bed rails, which are these, rails on the side of the bed that prevent her from falling out or getting out, and the mattress. And it choked her to death, and it killed her. And so the family then files suit, and that what they note is in the lawsuit, the facility was in violation of a number of Vermont state regulations as it relates to bed rails and air mattresses. And among the violations were the height of the bed, the failure by the facility to re-examine the best type of bed conditions, and insufficient staffing on the night that she died. A number of these violations were noted during a site visit 5 days after the nursing home resident death in a report filed by the Division of Licensing and Protection, which is just the specific state institution that Vermont has that checks out these, that
regulates the facilities.
Regulates these facilities.
Yeah.
And it looks like the plaintiff here is going to try, I'm guessing, to sue for punitive damages, because one of the complaints was that they acted with reckless, wanton, and willful disregard for the rights of this resident, which to us sounds like language like they're going after punitive damages. I don't know how successful they're going to be with that. But it is definitely a potential that this woman died as a result of neglect. First and foremost, bed rails are super dangerous. And I've always been torn with bed rails because there are times when they're super necessary, because you've got somebody who is in a bed and they're likely to fall off because they don't know what's going on and they're moving around a lot. And some of these beds are so antiquated and won't go all the way down to the ground. Sometimes, the family doesn't want the bed all the way to the ground, or the resident doesn't. So it's difficult. But, what would be ideal in a situation like this is if you had the mattress itself all the way down on the ground as far as it went. So it's all the way on the ground. So if this lady rolls out, she's right there on the floor. And then there would be another pad or some kind of protective covering on the floor. So if she rolls over on the floor, she's maybe falling a couple of inches and it's not really hurting her. And then you don't have bed rails. So there's nothing for her to get her head stuck in. So, the question for me would be, why didn't they do that? And there could be a number of reasons. They could have, really old beds that don't go all the way down to the ground. That could be one of them. Other reasons are just indifference or laziness. Bed rails are not outlawed at all. As a matter of fact, bed rails you'll see in a lot of admission assessments, residents are required to have bed rails. I have never liked them. I've never liked them because I think they're a form of restraint, but I've also never liked them because they're super dangerous.
Yeah.
The same reason that cribs sometimes make me super uncomfortable. If the slats in the rails on a crib are too wide, that a baby can stick its head through.
Yeah.
So I'm just not a huge fan of the types of bed rails that we have now, because they have slats and they have room for somebody to get stuck in. And I have seen residents with legs, arms,
call buttons, the
call buttons get stuck in there.
Yeah.
Bed rails are super dangerous. And this woman, having dementia, not knowing what's going on, got her head stuck in one and it killed her. And it's horrible. It really is.
And I think what's interesting to note in this article detailing the allegations made in the complaint is that they state the facility's ownership changed hands from John Larkin Incorporated to New Horizons Senior Living in May, In an emailed statement, Dan Covert, director of operations at New Horizons Senior Living, wrote that none of the individuals named in the lawsuit work there today. He said the company has no affiliation with the previous operator. It's like, this is how it goes. All they do is they create shell companies. One's a holding company, and the facility pays rent to the holding company. The other one is, it's just, that's why a lot of times when we sue these facilities, or when attorneys across the country sue these facilities for situations just like this, you have to name like 10 different defendants.
Yeah.
And then you got to sort out who's who. Like, are these shell? Are we playing games? Are we playing the shell game or what?
Yeah, if you go on to the CMS website, nursinghomecompare. Is it .org now, or is it .gov?
I think it's .org maybe.
But it's the government-funded website that shows all of the information on nursing homes that accept CMS money, and you will there's an ownership section. And you click on the ownership section, and it always has a huge list of people that have a certain percentage in these facilities. And it really is one of the most aggravating aspects of suing these places, because you'll have exactly this. I just recently sued somebody in both Georgia and Tennessee, only to find out, hey, the company in Tennessee dissolved earlier this year. Like, okay. Like, what are you guys doing? It's, you got to cut the head off the snake, and it's always hard to find the head.
Here's something else in this before we move on to another story. But a death certificate for this individual said her injury occurred after an unwitnessed fall. The survey by the Division of Licensing and Protection dispute that she fell. Quote, the injuries seen by the pathologist's examination were consistent with positional asphyxiation due to bed roll, not a fall. Her mattress had 2 overlays on top of it, measuring at 6 inches in height. According to the survey report, the gap between the 2 overlays and side rail was 5 inches wide. The overlays clearly cause an entrapment risk. If the resident were lying near the edge of the bed or sitting near the edge of the bed, this would actually further widen the gap, posing a further risk of entrapment.
And just to give you an idea of why this ends up happening, so this is what you have to understand. These nursing home owners are looking to cut corners and save cost. So what happens is you'll have healthcare facilities, hospitals, ERs, other nursing homes that are shutting down, and they're liquidating their property into cash. And so they'll buy these various beds that were never intended for residents with dementia or confusion. They're intended for people who have all of their wits about them, who are, completely aware of what's going on and are in a hospital. These are all hospital beds. And, working in nursing homes, I have seen hospital beds older than I am, that were never designed. Any stage of the design, did they contemplate someone with dementia sleeping in this bed, right? But they'll buy all these beds because they get them at a discount, and they'll just try to make them work. And it's a shame. It really is. Because these beds are not meant for a lot of these nursing home residents. They're dangerous.
They're dangerous.
Imagine if you were just like, I'm going to find something to put my kid in. I'll find something that looks like a crib, and that's good enough. That's what's going on here.
Mm-hmm. So that's a terrible tragedy. And that woman was 95 years old.
Yeah. What a horrible way to finish out living to 95. And when was this? This was last year, right?
Last year, 2017.
Think about all that this woman has experienced in her 100 years on Earth. She was alive. She was born shortly after World War I, right? She experienced women getting the right to vote. She experienced, the civil rights movement. She experienced the Great Depression. She experienced the 60s, the 70s, the Reagan era of the 80s. She experienced us going from a time when
space flight.
Yeah, when we had front crank Ford cars to space flight to now we're having driverless cars. And she exits this earth because some nursing home operator said, "Hey, look, I can get a bunch of these hospital beds real cheap for these residents." And that's what happened. You can blame the staff all you want. It's certainly, there's something to be said about them not going around and making their rounds to make sure that this didn't happen. But ultimately, it falls on the nursing home owners because they paid bottom prices for crummy beds to save money. And this is what happens.
So if you have a audience member, if you have a loved one that's in a nursing home and you walk in there and if you see bed rails, ask questions. Say, listen, can this bed be lowered?
Can it go all the way to the ground? Get your doctor involved. Yeah, hey, is there
pads
anything
that can go on the ground, like those pads that you can get from IKEA that you can stand on when you're doing your dishes? Like you get those surrounding the bed, lower the bed as much as possible. These are you have the right to go in there and talk to people about that.
If it were me and I had a loved one who was prone to potentially fall out of the bed, I would want it lowered all the way to the ground, take the bed rails off. I don't want any bed rails. I almost like there's a mattress on the floor, right? I would prefer that than them being, 3 or 4 feet off the ground. That's enough room to kill somebody. And if you've got a bed rail, well, they may not hit the ground, but their head could get stuck and they could
asphyxiate. So that's right. So
like this woman.
And that's what the decision this nursing home made. She had fallen out of this bed. Then this 95-year-old victim had fallen out of the bed twice before in the previous few months. So they go, well, what's the risk of her falling and hitting her head and getting a subdural hematoma and passing that way, or asphyxiating in the bed? And they decided, well, we'd rather have her asphyxiate in the bed, basically, from the bed rail. And that doesn't have to be that way. But like I said, we recommend that if you have a loved one in a nursing home that has bed rails, to do everything in your power to get those bed rails taken away. That doesn't necessarily mean that they can fall and hurt themselves. Try to mitigate the risk of fall without the use of the bed rails.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Real quickly, I wanted to point out another case. We're going to go over to Macungie Township, Pennsylvania. This is another case of elopement. 77-year-old Audrey Penn was discovered dead in a ditch on the side of the road in Lower Macungie Township, Pennsylvania, 1 month after being reported missing from Woodland Terrace at the Oak Nursing Home. The Department of Human Services revoked the facility's license for incompetence, negligence, and misconduct. The facility is actively seeking an appeal and has increased safety measures throughout the building. The real issue here that I wanted to point out before we come to a close of the episode is obviously this is a tragedy. But this is why it's important for nursing homes to get all hands on deck once they realize that somebody's gone, is that the longer they wait to contact law enforcement, the harder it gets to find them because the search parameter increases. It looks like here... Okay, so according to the agency that investigated, the morning of August 23rd, the day the individual was nowhere to be found, a staff member of Woodland Terrace noticed the woman wasn't in her room but violated the home's policy and waited 90 minutes to report that there was a missing resident to a supervisor. This decision, quote, dramatically increased the area they would have had to search and the difficulty in locating her. And that was end quote, according to the attorney that now represents them. So you got to think about that. Let's say that you waited 90 minutes. Depending on how mobile this individual was, they could make it in 90 minutes if they walked,
Oh, they could.
You're miles away.
They could be a resident with dementia who was completely ambulatory, meaning they had no problems walking, or they could be a resident that's in a motorized wheelchair that has. We had a resident like that in one of our cases. It wasn't the reason for the case that we had, but he had a history of taking his wheelchair all the way into town at one point. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I mean, you wait an hour and a half, which is what 90 minutes are, they could be anywhere.
They could be anywhere.
It's a huge radius.
Yeah. So, in this case, if you have a loved one that's in a nursing home that's in a possible elopement risk, just make sure that when you walk in there, usually, you know, in a lot of nursing homes, there'll be, you know, checkpoints. You got to get buzzed in.
Yeah.
There are alarms in the exits that alert people. If there's some type of courtyard or whatever, there's, you know, the access to the outside is also alarmed. There are lots of things that nursing homes can do to prevent elopement. In this instance, not only did they not do that, but they compounded the problem by waiting 90 minutes before reporting it to law enforcement, which had a terrible effect that this lady wasn't found until several weeks later.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's we talked about before the things to look for in a nursing home. You know, the smell, the staff, the overall cleanliness, the friendliness of everyone there. But another thing to look for is if you have somebody who is prone to elopement, whether or not they have cognitive issues. It could just be somebody who's stubborn and, you know, wants to try to go into town all the time. Walk through the nursing home, see how easy it is to get out of it. It shouldn't be that easy because there are people there that are like large children that can't be allowed free access to the outside because staff may not be able to have eyes on them, you know, 24 hours a day. And all it takes is for them to, you know, just a couple of seconds to go out of a door, out into the parking lot, and then they're gone.
That's it.
Yeah.
Speaking of that's it.
That's it for this episode.
Yeah, stick a fork in this episode. We've reached the conclusion. As always, you can watch the Nursing Home Abuse Podcast on our YouTube channel or at nursinghomeabusepodcast.com, or you can check us out, the audio version. You can download the audio or MP3. Where can we do that at, Will?
I think that we can stop making such a big deal about Spotify at this point because it's 4
Well, I mean,
episodes
just in general, where can they get it?
iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, anywhere that you listen to your favorite podcast, we're on there.
That's right. And we hope that you enjoyed today's episode, and we will see you next time.
See you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to the Nursing Home Abuse Podcast. Please be sure to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or Stitcher, and feel free to leave us some feedback. And for more information about the topics discussed in this episode, check out the show website, nursinghomeabusepodcast.com. That's nursinghomeabusepodcast.com. See you next time.